This man's name is Fred, a journalist in the United States. Currently, Fred was disguised as a member of a Nazi support group to write his articles, but because of his strange behavior, his real identity was discovered. He was also caught recording the chats of everyone there. Luckily, before he was beaten up, he managed to escape by jumping out of the window. The next day at the White House, a woman named Charlotte was chatting with the president. She was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. When she asked about the president's preparations for next year's presidential election, while smiling, the president said that he didn't want to be nominated in the next year's election. He instead appointed her to run for the presidential election in his place because so far, her work had been very good. The president was sure that she would definitely be able to lead this country. The president even said that he had arranged everything for Charlotte's candidacy. Hearing the news just now put a big smile on her face, knowing she could finally realize her dream of becoming the president of the United States finally came true. A few days later, Charlotte started meeting with the head of the campaign team. At that meeting, the head of the campaign team told her that her single status would tarnish her image in the eyes of the public. She suggested she approach the Canadian Prime Minister, and for the sake of the success of her campaign, Charlotte agreed. On the other hand, when Fred had just arrived at his office and wanted to hand over the results of the recording at the Nazi gathering yesterday, his boss informed him that the company had been sold to a rival company. Upon hearing that, Fred was very disappointed, and after venting his anger, he decided to resign. After returning from there, Fred met his friend Lance. When Lance found out that his friend had just quit his job, to cheer him up, he invited Fred to come to his client's party tonight. At the party, while enjoying the atmosphere, Fred accidentally saw Charlotte, who also happened to be there. Fred hurriedly ran away and confided in Lance that Charlotte was his childhood friend and first love, but that was in the past. He was sure she must have forgotten about him. In the middle of the conversation, suddenly a bodyguard-looking guy approached them and said that Charlotte wanted to talk with Fred. When Fred met her, he was surprised. It turned out that Charlotte still recognized him. The two of them then chatted for a long time, remembering their memories. When they were having fun chatting, suddenly an old man came and teased Charlotte. After the old man left, Fred, who was offended, immediately confronted and told him never to treat Charlotte that way again, while saying that Charlotte was not a cheap woman. After he was satisfied, Fred left from there, but not before he made another scene by falling off the stairs. After that incident, Charlotte, who was curious about Fred, tried to find information about him and found out that Fred was a writer. After reading some amazing articles written by Fred, Charlotte was amazed and planned to recruit him to be her speechwriter. The next day, Fred got a call from Charlotte's assistant named Maggie. Maggie asked him to come to the office. When he met Charlotte, she explained at length and gave Fred a job offer with a very large salary. And because he liked her since they were children, without asking too much, he accepted the job offer, and that very day, Fred went straight to work. That night on the plane, after writing a speech for the international meeting, Fred handed it over to Charlotte, but because the writing was too profane, Charlotte asked for all the contents of the speech to be changed. Fred, who was confused, suggested that she use the speech he had written on his high school graduation day. Coincidentally, the theme of the speech was the same as the theme of her speech. Fred then read the contents of his speech word for word, and Charlotte was amazed to hear him. In the morning, when they arrived at the meeting place, Charlotte's team rushed to prepare for the evening's event. That night before the event started, when Fred was smoking, Maggie came and said that there were several contents of the speech that had to be changed. Fred was annoyed because he didn't like the writing he had made with great effort and was as perfect as possible was changed at will. Rather than changing it, it would be better for them not to have Fred's speech. He was determined to take the laptop containing his written speech. Seeing Fred, Charlotte hurriedly chased him outside. Outside, the two of them were arguing. In the middle of the debate, they both immediately fell silent in awe, watching the beautiful aurora borealis in the sky. When things started to calm down, Charlotte explained that she also wanted to read Fred's beautiful writing in full without being cut. However, unfortunately, she was only given a short time to hear the words of the slot. Fred finally gave in, and fortunately, that evening's event went smoothly. The next day on the plane, Fred apologized for last night's problems. After making up, they chatted about each other's favorite things, and since yesterday's incident, the two of them actually got closer. Days passed, and they always worked together, spent time together while visiting other countries, and even when they had free time, Charlotte always invited Fred to watch films together at her place, until one night, when Fred and Charlotte were writing a new speech, the place was suddenly raided. Luckily, they managed to survive. While hiding in a warehouse, Charlotte tried to calm Fred down. She said that as a government official, incidents like that often happened, and after a while, Fred would be able to get used to it. While waiting for help to arrive, they both chatted while reminiscing. Carried away by the atmosphere, Fred dared to express his feelings. It turned out that Charlotte also liked him. That night after the tense incident, the two of them officially dated each other. Early in the morning, Charlotte and his team went by helicopter to Argentina. That evening at the venue, Maggie warned Fred not to get too close to Charlotte because if the public found out about their relationship, Charlotte's reputation could be ruined. Upon hearing that, Fred remained silent. Throughout the party, Fred continued to look at Charlotte from a distance while contemplating Maggie's words earlier, but when he saw Charlotte dancing with another man, he was jealous. After the dancing event finished, Fred quietly took Charlotte to the kitchen. He then played music on his cell phone, then invited Charlotte to dance with him. The next day in the office during an online meeting, the president asked Charlotte to cancel the idea of forest protection because many company owners would be disadvantaged. After the meeting, Charlotte told Fred about the president's request just now. She was confused about whether to refuse the request of the president who had contributed to nominating her as a presidential candidate or comply with the request and let the forests be damaged due to continuous exploitation by businessmen who only think about money. Fed up with the problem, to vent the stress, Charlotte invited Fred to the club. When they were enjoying the moment, one of the bodyguards informed Charlotte that the United States military needed her help to negotiate. When she heard that, even though she was very drunk, she still had to go. Arriving at the headquarters, the general explained that currently there was a pilot taken hostage by a terrorist. Charlotte tried to stay focused, and so she could relax, she negotiated with the terrorists while smoking. Luckily, after talking from heart to heart, Charlotte managed to convince the terrorists to free the pilot. A few days later at the office, when Charlotte was working, Maggie suggested that it would be better for her not to continue the relationship with Fred. Maggie was worried that if Charlotte was found out, her reputation could fall. A lowly man like Fred didn't deserve a woman like her. Charlotte was angry and asked her not to interfere in her personal life. She said that whatever happened, she would stay with Fred. Upon hearing that, Maggie could only be silent, not knowing what to say. That night at Charlotte's house, she kept thinking about what Maggie said earlier. Amid her confusion, she saw a girl on TV who said that she idolized Charlotte and wanted her to be president of America. Charlotte was moved to hear that. The next day, during a meeting, the president and a rich businessman asked Charlotte to delete her idea regarding forest protection during the presidential election campaign because the president and the businessman were having a big project that had to use forest land. Knowing Charlotte's stubbornness, the businessman even went so far as to show recorded evidence of Charlotte's relationship with Fred, while threatening that if she didn't comply, the video would be uploaded to the internet. Charlotte was forced to comply with their request. After the meeting, she met Fred and told him about the threat. At first, Fred tried to calm her down, but when he found out that she agreed to their request and allowed the forest to be destroyed, he was disappointed. The two argued and blamed each other until finally, because they felt the relationship could no longer continue, the two of them broke up. After they broke up, Fred confided in Lance. He was disappointed with Charlotte because, as an official, she should have considered the disadvantages of destroying the forest. Just for the sake of her position, she was willing to let nature be damaged. Lance tried to calm him and said that political life is different from normal life as things were not as simple as they looked. The most important thing was not right and wrong but understanding. Fred couldn't say anything to that explanation and remained silent. At night, even though Charlotte and Fred had broken up, deep down they both missed each other. Fred couldn't hold back his longing and finally dared to call Charlotte. He apologized for being selfish and not understanding her position. He said that he missed her and whatever he would do as long as their relationship could return to being as close as before, but upon hearing all that, Charlotte was just silent and didn't answer a word. The next day, on the plane on the way to the campaign venue, Charlotte kept thinking about Fred. When she arrived at the campaign location, she immediately went up to the stage and then made a speech to greet her supporters, but in the middle of the speech, while holding back her tears, Charlotte apologized for failing to become a good presidential candidate. She then dared herself to expose all of the president's rottenness and announce her relationship with Fred to the public, a simple man who did nothing wrong but was dragged into the cruel world of politics. She said that a scandal video of her and Fred might soon hit the internet. The confession just now shocked everyone. After the speech, Charlotte left the stage, while on the other side, at a bar after seeing the speech on TV, Fred and Lance rushed to look for Charlotte. Because of opposing the president, Charlotte's scandal video began to spread widely on the internet until it went viral, but even though the video was spread, Fred didn't care. The most important thing was for him to find the woman he loved the most. When he arrived at the campaign location, he was chased by journalists because the news was viral, but he remained focused and continued to look for Charlotte. In the evening, when he returned home, he was shocked to find Charlotte waiting for him inside. She apologized and said that she missed him. All of his life, thinking she could be a strong woman, she found herself broken, longing for the one figure she loved the most. She had decided that she was willing to lose her position for Fred's sake. When Fred heard that, he was moved, and after expressing their feelings for each other, the two finally got back together. Amid the intimacy, Lance told them that the journalists were waiting for them outside for an interview. Charlotte and Fred tried to strengthen each other and then dared to come out in front of the crowd. Charlotte proudly introduced Fred as her boyfriend, and unexpectedly, instead of being bombarded with criticism, all the journalists present actually cheered happily to support the two of them. A few months later, after the election, it was seen that Charlotte had succeeded in winning the hearts of the people and had been officially elected as the new president of the United States. She and Fred had also married. While being interviewed, Fred confidently said that even though he was just an ordinary man, he would try to be the ordinary man who always does his best for his beloved president.